We've talked about the joinery and how the animal was made, how it was set out. But now comes the artistry in the piece. This is where the carver really gets to do what excites him and what he loves. By the way, this is Rick Nickham here. He's the head of the fiberglass, and this restoration project, the actual restoration part, was under his guidance. So Rick and I have worked closely together over the last few months. I was quite impressed with what the fiberglass shop here at Silver Dollar City did. They took the horses off the carousel, the horses that were carved here in 1983. They had gotten worn, you know, and so they started by sanding down each of these horses. And there was quite a bit of paint on there to sand down, wasn't there? Yes. Years and years of buildup had accrued on them. So they sanded them down, and it was quite amazing to see the joinery underneath the paint when they did sand it down. I mean, there was boards every which way kind of in there. I even saw one that had an oval piece right here, and I had never seen that before in joinery. So the people who built this were quite good at what they did. This just being a square piece for the body, a square head, square legs, and they put them together. Like right here is a joint where the leg would have been added. There's usually a joint right here at the head. You can see this right here. And the ears usually are out of the same piece. The mane is out of the same piece. And the tail would have been added. So it's the head, the legs, and the tail that would have been added separately. Now what Rick and his team did, they took them and they sanded them down totally to bare wood. And then any cracks or just dinks, holes, whatever, imperfections, yes, were then filled with a filler, and the guys then sanded down that filler. They even had to learn to carve. There were a couple of ears and other things that were missing, right? And they had to get carving tools and carve the ears and then replace them. And once you do replace them, then you have to fill and sand. I think sanding is probably the biggest thing about all this, was the sanding.
And to retain the original carvings of the what was done.
And it's hard to sand around these little details. I mean, that just takes an enormous amount of time and patience. So there's been a lot go into the restoration of these animals. They were originally carved, and then for the restoration as well, they were carved with hand tools. I've talked to one of the original guys that did it back then, and no power tools were used on this carousel at all. All the cracks have been filled and all that, and the ears replaced or whatever imperfections were in it. Then they're sprayed with this white. Now, is this just the primer here, or is this
the base color?
That's a base color. Okay, but the primer looked almost exactly like this.
The primer was also white.
Yeah. There was an epoxy primer that was sprayed onto it with an air gun, and what that did was it made everything smooth and even. Now, the bad thing about a primer is that it takes the wood look out of something. But in something that's stack joined like this is, you would have too many joints showing with just a thin layer of paint. This primer is actually 3 mils thick. 3 mils thick is the primer. And that's going to give our carousel, because we have so many guests and we plan on a lot of children riding this carousel, and that will keep it nice throughout its history, its time here at Silver Dollar City.